Welcome to another episode of Careers Express, brought to you by the Cyprus Mail, where job seekers and professionals can stay up to date with what matters most in our world of work. Today, we will talk about a topic highly discussed and covered in the media in the last few months, the Great Resignation. Joining me for our discussion is founder and CEO at HR Innovate, Katerina Andreou. Katerina, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me.
Let's define what we mean by the Great Resignation. Essentially, it refers to the record number of employees quitting their jobs globally across sectors since April 2021, creating an unheard of number of vacancies. However, trends usually tend to reach Cyprus more slowly. So my first question to you, Katerina, is, do we have the Great Resignation in Cyprus?
I would say in Cyprus, from what we've seen as recruiters so far since COVID, is more of a great pause. I'm not sure I would call it the Great Resignation as far as we're concerned, but definitely there's been this sort of long pause with candidates now rethinking their options, reevaluating priorities, and not being necessarily so mobile.
Is there a specific sector, industry, gender, or role that is being most impacted?
I don't actually think there's a sector that hasn't been impacted. I think COVID, because it was a general happening to everybody, and we were all sort of collectively shocked and thrown into this new surreal reality. I think every sector's been impacted, in particular, of course, retail and hospitality. But our two main sectors as recruiters is tech and finance. And they've been heavily impacted from a client service point of view because they're unable to deliver and keep to deadlines as much as they were pre-COVID because of this sort of candidate-led market now and retention and recruitment being such an issue.
What would you say are the main reasons for these departures?
Departures wise, unemployment at the moment is around 6.4%. So it's definitely gone down. It's a little bit above normal, which would be more about the 5% mark. But I think that generally people that have left their jobs, especially your C-suite levels, because it's more the C-suite level candidate that we are aware of that have decided without having another job to leave their job. It's because COVID has caused people to take this pause in their professional life to reevaluate, and they've decided that since this can happen, anything can happen. So it's made them stop short and reevaluate their priorities in life generally and whether or not they want to be in that job situation anymore.
Do the people who are leaving usually have another job lined up?
Not always. Predominantly with C-suite level candidates, we've seen quite a few in the last year and a half, I would say in particular, who have chosen to leave before finding another job because they've simply made the life decision that they don't want to continue. Pre-COVID, they might have been willing to sort of stay and keep going in the cycle that they were in, but no longer.
The C-suite generally have the funds to jump without another job lined up, whereas younger job seekers wouldn't have that cushion. So does that mean young job candidates are willing to accept less attractive job conditions?
No, when we're talking about Cyprus, so if we think about Cyprus in this region, young job seekers still do have a cushion. So yes, the C-suite level candidate has perhaps more financial cushioning from higher salaries and years of working, but your juniors in Cyprus also have the cushion that is widely known as mum and dad. We still have this cultural, this very culturally specific softness in our family structures towards adult children and allowing them to continue to find themselves professionally while, mum and dad pay the bill. So young people aren't necessarily running out to any job if they don't have to.
The younger generations are stereotyped as being the first out the door usually, but it is only younger employees resigning. And does this trend hold true in Cyprus as well?
No, I think that people choosing to opt out since the pandemic and everything, globally and in Cyprus, it's irrespective of gender or age. I think people psychologically are tired. I think they've had enough. I think the pandemic threw everything into a spin. And whereas pre-pandemic, everybody was sort of going along the same wheel, paying their dues and doing what they needed to do to progress in their careers, I think being at home with family in lockdown, seeing that the pandemic went on for years and is still not over, I think it made them decide that their priorities needed to change and they needed to spend more time with the people that they love, and that there was actually an alternative.
So, what is it that makes a young candidate reject what would otherwise seem like an attractive offer?
Younger candidates, as well as older candidates these days, they want to know about the workplace, the vibe, the culture. They want to know whether the employer is conscious of environmental conscientiousness. They want to know if it's going to be an environment where they can be happy, if it's an employer that will show concern, flexibility. Salary is important, title has something to do with things, but more often than not, people are looking for employers that make them feel safe, that are listening to them and helping them as we all proceed through this adaptation phase to this new world that we live in after the pandemic.
If the Gen Z job seeker is much more reluctant to simply put up with conventional working conditions merely for money, why aren't more of them in Cyprus starting their own business or becoming freelancers?
Quite honestly, I think it's because in Cyprus, we don't have the infrastructure to support small businesses, entrepreneurs. I don't think culturally we encourage risk-taking as a behavior in our young people. I don't think an entrepreneurial spirit is something that in Cyprus we're very good at encouraging. I think it's something that's being more talked about and perhaps will become more of a feature in future. But right now, as a culture, as a business environment, I don't think that we offer enough initiatives and support to young people to maybe go that route. And I think the pandemic has also made young people pause and sort of think a little bit more carefully about taking such plunges into entrepreneurial depths, because without the infrastructure and support, it becomes even more daunting.
Would it be fair to say that unconsciously Gen Z job seekers are actually suspicious of the big company system that they are applying for? Could this also be the reason for them to reject a job offer?
Yes, definitely. I mean, our younger candidates are much more aware. They're much more cautious of the big brand names. And unlike previous generations, my own, for example, where we would have paid our dues, we would have gone for a big brand to get it on our CV and to progress. The younger generations have many more questions about it. They do a lot more due diligence. And I think one of the pluses about Cyprus is because we are so small, reputation is easy to build. And companies and employers these days are very well known. It's kind of almost like a local Glassdoor effect. So in Cyprus, if you are a poor employer, or if you are a non-competitive employer who doesn't want to keep up with things or offer good working conditions, it won't be long before everybody knows. So young people are keen now to research and find out who an employer is.
What actions are local companies taking to address the situation, though? If so, how?
I think a lot of companies, especially in the tech domain, in finance, they've been a little bit slower on the uptake, but definitely in tech, where there's a huge global talent shortage, in Cyprus and in other countries that we recruit in, they've shown themselves to be a lot more embracing of increasing salaries, to be more in alignment with market rates. They've shown increased flexibility. So when it came to obviously, working around lockdowns and working from home, and now the trend to the hybrid split, they've definitely embraced it a lot faster. And I think that this idea that you have to compete as an employer, you have to brand yourself, you have to be known for treating people well, that has been much faster and easier understood by certain sectors like tech. Whereas in finance, they've been a bit more reluctant, a bit more stubborn, I think, in being able to embrace that. They've been a little bit more reticent, perhaps because obviously the nature of the work that they do with clients and security and confidentiality, it doesn't lend itself as easily to being flexible with working from home, for example. But as a sector, they're struggling to keep up.
Let's turn to your industry now. How is the Great Resignation impacting the work of recruiters?
Well, it's definitely, it's a candidate-led market. So we have more vacancies than we've ever had. And globally, every country has more vacancies and a lot more new roles appearing on the market every day. But there is a talent shortage in every single sector. So our work is increasingly difficult because we have very harassed, very stressed and frustrated clients, desperate to recruit, and we don't have enough candidates to supply. Or the new demands and new attitudes of our candidates are not matching the demands of the clients. So we're trying to broker and be the middleman and serve both sides, but it's become quite difficult. And we are very much a sort of tense stalemate situation on the market. And unfortunately, because it is candidate led, they have the upper hand, and we're hoping that clients will meet them halfway, but it's a very tense struggle.
Of course, what appeared to be recent development, in this case resignations, are actually the result of many years of unmet employee needs. What do you believe the unmet needs might be?
I think that it's really about going back to basics. And I think at times of crisis or monumental historical moments like the pandemic, I think that you get to a point where everything sort of spins on its head and almost reboots. And I think people have gone to work and decided that they want the basics. They don't want to be shouted at. The bar is incredibly low. They want to go to work and just be treated well, treated with respect. They want to be paid respectfully, not necessarily, they're not greedy, but they would like to be paid fairly. What people are asking for is actually very simple. They want to be heard. They want to be listened to. And it's at times of crisis that you really want to know that your boss, that your family, that all those key people in your life and those key components are in place and that they've got your back. So COVID was a very testing time. And if you discovered that your employer didn't care, wasn't flexible, started to lay lots of people off, maybe made lots of knee-jerk, quite brutal reactions, then you reevaluated and perhaps thought, no, I don't need to do this anymore.
So we've shifted to the candidate kind of job market rather than the employer kind of job market, right?
Yes. I mean, this is definitely a candidate-centric market now. I think in England, 3 months ago, for the first time in history, there was 1.2 million vacancies and not enough candidates. And it's the same in Cyprus. In America, in 2020, there were over 4 million Americans left their jobs without another job to go to. So it's a whole wave of change that we're riding at the moment, and it is led by the job seeker.
Those are big numbers. If more pay, financial perks, or thank you bonuses are less important to employees than employers think, what do employees really want?
I think they want a conversation. They want a partnership, more of a collaboration. I think the sort of old school mentality that it's all transactional, that you go to work, provide a service, clock off, get your pay packet, I think it's out of date. And I think the younger generation know it too. So you can't buy them off necessarily. It won't be enough. They do want to be respected and they want a conversation. We're getting more and more younger candidates, for example, asking for stock options because they don't necessarily want to job hop, but they do want to know that the investment is mutual and that everybody's going to show a little bit of consideration and flexibility, especially, I mean, if you take into account working parents and other types of employees that would really appreciate the flexibility. And in some sectors, it was never the case that there was that flexibility. Take finance. It's changing because it's going to have to.
Do you expect the Great Resignation to continue within the next 3 to 6 months, or do you think it will die out?
I think it will continue for at least the next 6 months. I don't think that there'll be a massive change in that. I think as cost of living continues to rise and the energy crisis continues, and now with unfortunate events in the Ukraine, I think that maybe candidates will have to take jobs maybe more readily to be able to pay bills more comfortably. So we might see some shift there, but it's going to be an unhappy shift if that's the case. I think we're much better finding solutions together. As always, I mean, it's, it sounds very warm and fuzzy and hippie-like to say it, but I think if we backed each other up in these moments of crisis, and if employers and employees could meet each other halfway, we'd all be a lot better off in the long term, I think.
To sum it all up, how can companies turn attrition to attraction?
Listen, quite simply, just listen to your employees, to your advisors, and to your market. Everybody in business knows their sector. There's no point being an expert in your field if you're not going to listen and take your own advice. So I think if you want to be a responsible employer, if you want to have the staff and the retention figures to be able to project and forecast and make sure that you can service your customers and projects, then listen. And if your employees need understanding in one or two areas, or they need to work alongside you to accommodate things, then rather than force things, I think you would be a lot better off being human about things and compromising.
Finally, where can people learn more about HR Innovate?
Well, luckily we are fully digital, so you can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Twitter. We have our website, of course, which is www.hrinnovate.org. On LinkedIn, we have a heavy presence, and anyone can reach out to me at any point. We have offices in Nicosia. All our contact details are on our website, and I'm readily available on LinkedIn or any of the platforms.
Katerina, thanks so much for sharing these valuable insights.
Thank you for having me, Elizabeth.
Thanks also to you, Careers Express viewers, for joining us. If you found this video useful, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and follow us on our social media as well. See you in a new video very soon.